Why is that the success rate for the worst cases of alienation, but the numbers are so much lower for mild and moderate?
That's a great question.
Welcome back, guys, here to Cases and Cocktails today. Bryan Eggleston here with my beautiful wife, Janice, and we've got a special guest today, Lisa Rothfus. How you doing today, Lisa?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. Fantastic. We're glad to have you. We've got a drink today that we're going to get into, but before we do that, let everybody know kind of what's going on. First and foremost, if you haven't noticed, we are on all the audio platforms for podcasts. That includes Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the good things. So check us out there if you want to see some more content. And then today we've got a drink, a special drink. It's got a little bit of a tree or something in it. I'm not sure what that is. All right, Jay, tell me what the drink is.
It's just a Paloma. So there's grapefruit juice, tonic, blanco tequila, which is the 𝒞𝒶𝓈𝓈 because we had it at home.
Nice.
And then the garnishes are rosemary and grapefruit.
Fantastic. All right. Lisa, you down with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's see how this goes.
Cheers.
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 Yeah, I can do that.
It's very good.
That's fantastic. Did you make that?
No, Fernanda's going to leave us and go be a bartender somewhere.
That's no lie, man. She's fantastic. I like this. All right. I like the tequila too. Yeah, it is one of my personal favorites. So, how you doing today?
Good, you?
Good. Fantastic. We got a special guest. She's amazing, by the way. But more importantly, we've got a topic talking about parental alienation. But more importantly, we're talking about interventions, remedies. How do we, when we find out that we've got a case that's got parental alienation, it's actually going on, what are the remedies? What are the ways that we can fix this?
Yeah, I think once we started diving into parental alienation, for me at least, one of the hard things, or what I thought was going to be the hardest, was identifying it and knowing whether this was real parental alienation or something else. And then I realized that was the easy part. Now, what do we do?
Right. Now you've got a case and there's alienation going on. What do we do? And that's kind of where Lisa, that's where you come in. Right?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Now, Lisa, tell us kind of what your background is with parental alienation, what you do, that sort of stuff.
Sure. Well, I actually started probably working in the field about 10 years ago, but I've been a therapist for about 40 years.
Okay. That's an LPC?
I'm actually an MSW or an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker.
Yeah.
I did my training in Boston.
Okay.
And I worked at 2 Harvard teaching hospitals there. And then I went on and got my postgraduate at Cambridge Family Institute.
Oh, fantastic.
And then I ended up in Austin eventually.
Fair.
And I would say for the last 10 years, I really focused a lot on high conflict, working with high conflict families. I started out as a guardian.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I was doing. So I got a lot of help, particularly from Sandra.
Fair.
And I learned over time. It really kind of brings together a special group of skills in order, I think, to be able to do reunification therapy. And I think that I got fortunate because over time, a lot of those skills came together for me. And guardian work helped me a lot with that because I got into the court system, learned how to work with lawyers, learned that you can work with them.
It doesn't have to be against each other. Yeah, that's right.
In fact, I enjoy talking to lawyers. I talk to more lawyers in a day than I do almost anybody else.
That's fair.
But yeah, I started to learn a lot. But then I realized I really wanted my focus to be more on treatment because that's where my heart is. That's where I started out as a clinician. So I really just wanted to learn as much as I could about how to be the best clinician I could be in this field. It's so new. There are no certificates or trainings for this. You really have to just kind of decide, okay, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to find out what is the research, what's happening, go train with the best people out there.
Yeah.
And I always like doing that anyway. So that's kind of how I got started. And I trained with so many good people. And then I really kind of just gave my heart to it. I love working with the families, love working with the children. Yes, it's very challenging. They're very challenging situations, but they're also really amazing situations and that come out of it. So
tell me, how long have you been dealing directly just with high conflict parental alienation cases?
Probably the last 10 years.
Last 10 years.
Yeah.
In your experience in the last 10 years, have you seen more or less of those cases overall?
Well, I see so many of them. So in my, probably more.
Right.
In my situation. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us, you get court appointed to deal with this,
Yes, I do get court appointed.
and sometimes the attorneys agree to get you involved as well.
Yes, usually it has to be a mutual agreement
Mhm.
between all the parties and the attorneys, and then I end up being the person who works with the family.
Okay. So let's break that down just a little bit. So your role, particularly as a clinician, right, in providing the treatment, is not necessarily during the case, but more after the litigation case has gone on.
Sometimes we're in the middle of litigation,
Right.
so I have to be involved in that. But yes, usually you've gone to court, there's been some decisions made, they have decided that they want to use a reunification therapist, and then somebody gets named, and that's where I jump in and start working with the case.
So when you get named in a case, your role is the reunification therapist?
As long as they put that on the order, which I hope that they do, and yes, then I become the official reunification therapist.
Well, and let's talk about that real quick. So are you saying that the verbiage that gets put in the order is really important for your position?
Absolutely.
Tell
yeah.
us about that.
Well, I think sometimes people just put family therapy in there, and I'm like, family therapy is not reunification therapy. They're completely different.
Right.
They require a little bit different set of skills. So I always tell lawyers when I'm talking to them, please put in reunification therapy, because it gives me the ability to really do more with the case. Family therapy, everybody's going to sit around and talk about their feelings. Reunification therapy, we have a goal. We need to get it done. We need to work towards that goal.
And what's the goal for reunification therapy?
Well, there's a bunch of goals, but obviously the most obvious one is to get the child feeling comfortable again, seeing a parent they haven't seen in a long time, going back and forth between the two families. But there are other things you've got to do as well to actually make that happen. You've got to work with both parents. You've got to coach both parents. Can't just be one or the other. You have to help the children to feel more comfortable. And, as you're doing that, then you are able to sort of help the process move along. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you have to take in consideration when you're doing the cases.
Tell me, you're talking about the language that goes in there. Do you have specific language that you like?
I actually do.
Okay.
I have a sample order I can send, or sometimes I just talk to the lawyer and say, hey, be sure that you get in there that every member of the family must work with me. That includes step parents. That includes anybody who's a significant caretaker for the child. Sometimes it's grandparents, because there are a lot of things that go on in a family dynamic. And it's not just about target parent and kid, which is sometimes what people want to go for. And I'm like, nope, that will not work. I have to have everybody involved and understand even the people that are in the background that might be negative advocates that are affecting the whole family system. So I really need everybody to be there with me.
And I want to break that down even more. So, what you're talking about is the target parent, the parent that's being alienated,
right?
And the child. Obviously everyone wants to work on that therapeutically,
right?
It makes sense, and I think it's common sense, but maybe not to everybody, that the alienating parent needs to engage in the therapeutic process.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And then even beyond that, there may be other actors, right? And I don't mean like bad actors, I don't mean that to be derogatory, but there may be other influences, I guess is a better word, right? Like you said, step parents or family members that are involved in that.
Absolutely.
How often do you see that where you have not just the alienating parent, but you have these extra individuals involved?
Well, actually, quite frequently, we have shadow figures. Like if I have a case and it's not moving along, I've seen both parents, I've seen kids, and I'm like, okay, who's the shadow figure? Is it an older sibling? Which a lot of times it is. Is it a grandparent who's had significant influence on the family, the finances, all of that? So I'm looking at that. And I hate to say, one of the other people are therapists, individual therapists.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare if I don't have them working with me.
Well, that's what I was about to ask. And that adds another layer that needs to be in the order, that everyone has to provide disclosures and sign waivers so you can then communicate with all the other professionals.
Right. And that's another thing I asked to put in the order is that I am the person who helps coordinate the case and that everybody does sign HIPAAs and we can speak to each other.
Right.
And with the exception of a guardian, if there's a guardian ad litem in the case, then I can let them take the lead on pretty much organizing all of us speaking and talking together. But sometimes that doesn't happen. So I still have to get involved
You
and
have to
get
be
it
the one to
moving
do it.
along. Yes.
Not all guardian ad litem the same way.
Exactly.
That's a
And,
true statement.
I also think that, unfortunately, I think judges and oftentimes lawyers get individual therapy for everybody. That'll solve it.
Right.
And I'm like, no, that makes it worse.
Right.
Like,
Why does that make it worse?
well, there are a couple reasons. One, and this happens actually a lot. I'll get a therapist who doesn't know anything about reunification therapy, doesn't know anything about what the goal is here. The goal is to get the child reunited. They're like, but the child doesn't want to do it, or they're not feeling comfortable yet, or, they've been abused and we can't do it. I'm like, guys, do you understand? We have an order from the court. This is not a do we want to do it situation. This is we will help the child to do it.
Right.
And we will get it going. And so I think that's kind of one of the big issues that I sometimes come across. And that can completely stop the process.
What I hear a lot, especially when that misstep happens, and I start talking to the therapist, especially the child's therapist, I hear, well, I'm just going to meet the child where the child is.
I know.
And I can appreciate that in certain instances, but this is not that. And we have to take extra steps to push the child a little bit.
Right. And I tell them, the child's never going to be ready. I
Right,
mean, if we
right.
sit around and wait for this child to be ready,
Right.
we're not going to be able to actually do this.
Well, they're literally being told and manipulated into not being ready, right? So we have
exactly.
to engage in that. I want to say this real fast too, by the way. I think that's great. We had a comment the other day where we had mentioned therapy as being part of one of the ways to kind of help alleviate or remedy parental alienation. And the comment was very astute. And I'm not taking the comment away from the commenter, but it was like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen therapy work in a parental alienation case.
That was an attorney.
And I think,
Wow.
I think I think it's exactly what you just said, though.
Mm-hmm.
The individual therapy is not going to work if everyone has individual therapy. You can't just go to therapy. We're talking about specific type of therapy that reunification therapy that we talk about in order to address the parental alienation. Is that right? So it's important that the attorneys get the order right.
Yes.
You got to be able to talk to everybody, both parties, third parties, professionals, all that good stuff. All right. So let's break this down.
Okay.
What does this look like? Are there different levels to this? There's different levels of PA, right? So there's mild, moderate, and severe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you got the same type of thing for interventions, or is just everybody going and doing the same thing?
No, it's really not the same. And I think that's one of the problems with a therapist who says they do reunification. Do they really understand all the complexities of evaluating and then deciding, okay, what path do I take here?
Right.
If I've got a mild case and I don't have a child that's like horribly fearful to see a parent, then a lot of times it's a lot of psychoeducational,
Right.
Working with both parents and saying, okay, here's some things that you are doing that might be causing some anxiety for this child. Let's see if we can work some of those out.
Right.
The other parent, I might say, hey, we need to work on a different parenting style here. I think the game's changed. You don't quite get that you have to parent a little differently here. So that's more of a mild. They're also willing to come to therapy. They're willing to work with you. Is not a situation where they're just resistant. Then you get to more of the moderate. In that situation, you definitely have more resistance. Not necessarily out and out refusal, but definitely resistance.
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll come to therapy. There's a lot of excuses. Oh, kid's sick. We've got baseball. Can't this or that. And I'm like, hey, guys, you need to get in here, And so you see a little bit more resistant. You see the kid also being a little bit more resistant. Parents like, well, we really need to take into account their feelings, how they feel about this. I mean, I could write a book on that one. And I was like, yeah, I get that. And I want to listen to the child, but still, we've been asked to do this. We need to do it.
Right.
So those situations can turn around.
Right.
I definitely see that if I explain certain things to the parents, sometimes it can definitely turn around. But then there are situations, and I can usually spot them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If I have a parent the kid comes in and just gives me a laundry list of all the things they hate about that parent, all the reasons they don't want to see that parent, They're not really my father. I'm never going to see him again after I'm 18. I mean, it just kind of, you start to hear
You
the
can see, you can
verbiage.
just see the red flags.
Oh, yeah.
One after the
one
yeah.
after the other. And the parent, again, you're not listening to my child. Nobody's listening to my child. That's not, it's not a safe situation. So then I will do all of the normal things I try to do.
Right.
But usually I have the favored parent who won't really work with me,
Right.
who won't talk to the child and say, look, it's important for you to have a relationship with your mom or your dad. You need to get on board. We got to work on this.
Right.
And if that's not happening and the child is still refusing, and just maybe completely refusing to go to the other parent's home, which is more likely with severe,
Right.
then I'm like, okay, this is not working. We need a different kind of therapy here.
Right.
And I just go to the lawyers and say, look, I've been at this, 3, 4, 5 months. Nothing's changing. You guys need to decide, what do you want to do here?
Right. And what is the next step after that?
What are their options? Yeah.
Well, that's the sad part. There aren't a lot of options. Sometimes if we're in a case and I'm the only person in the case that's seeing the severity, I will say, we need to get somebody else on board here.
Right.
If it's just my eyes and we're going to the court, I don't know if the judge is going to just listen to me.
Right.
Right.
But if we have a collection of people
Right.
that are seeing it, we're much more likely to make some progress. And then the other problem with getting intervention for severe is it's really got to be last resort, right? You really have to have tried everything.
Right.
And sometimes gone into the court multiple times and the judge
Right.
is like, okay, let's try again, or let's do a new therapist, or
Right.
let's do that. It's not working. It's almost like there has to be a chance for everybody's mindset to shift
Right.
around what we are really doing here. And when that starts to happen, you can go ahead and ask for a more intensive,
Right.
which there are not very many people in the country who actually do them or will do them.
Right. Do you?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I've been trained to do them. And it is a very different kind of therapy.
Right.
So I don't think a lot of people want to do it.
Right. Right.
It's really, for intensive days of working with a family, you literally you just immerse yourself in becoming part of this family.
Mm-hmm.
And most therapists, they work with people 50 minutes. They're done. They're out of there. That's it.
Right.
You can't do that in
Right.
this situation.
Because it's so severe.
Oh, yeah. And you have to really be able to get in and allow the process to unfold. Like, I can't start a significant, heavy duty conversation about narratives that have been, put on the child and then say, oh, okay, it's an
Time's
hour.
up.
Let's take, that isn't going to work.
Right.
So I can get in there and in this setting, I have hours to work with.
Right.
I can go a couple hours.
Right.
If we're on a good roll, let's go for a couple hours. Let's get into this. Let's work it out. And then, okay, let's take a break.
Right.
And then we're going to come back and we're going to do a little more.
Yeah. I've got it. So I'm glad you said it. And I'm glad you got into it because it's the thing that I think we hear a lot about. It's the thing that is probably a pretty, a hot sports opinion.
It's very controversial.
Controversial,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so
Very.
I want to ask some questions just so I can go ahead and get some of it out there that maybe some of y'all want, right? Maybe some of y'all are sitting at home thinking about is this some sort of boot camp where you're holding people
goodness.
hostage?
Locking the doors from the outside. I mean,
There's a
what
lot
this
of
is?
rumors about that
Right,
out
yeah,
there, but
yeah.
I don't know anybody that
Yeah,
has a boot
yeah,
camp or
yeah.
a camp with barbed wire around it. No, nothing. I mean, mine is done in my office where I
Right.
do all of my therapy.
Right.
And I work to make my office as comfortable as possible. I mean, we got dogs, we got snacks, we got candy, we got games, we got
Right.
sand, we got all that. I want them to come in and feel comfortable. So no, it is not a situation. I don't know of any of that that's going on out there.
Okay.
what does a typical intensive look like? I mean, is the whole family coming in at once? Are you scheduling them throughout the day? Logistically, how do you make all that happen?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a really good question because this is another thing I think a lot of therapists are not very comfortable with. If we decide to do an intensum, I'm like, okay, who's involved in the child's life?
Right.
Who are people that relatives or friends or people that have previously had connection to this child? And I've had aunts, uncles, grandparents, I mean, you name it. Those people have joined us
Right.
in the process, and it's been incredibly powerful. So I think some of the most amazing work happens when you have all of those people together. So yes, it's 4 days. Maybe I'll say, okay, bring this on in this day, or let's have the grandparents come in this day. And that's also to help the child feel more comfortable.
Right.
A lot of times they like having
All
other
the-
family members around that they used to feel connected
It's their
to.
support system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you start by really doing a combination of things. You definitely start with what we call structural family therapy, because you need to start helping the child understand. I always talk about healthy versus unhealthy family structure,
Right.
triangulation, enmeshment, loyalty binds. These are all words that we look at. I review them every day so
Right.
the child gets to see them.
Right.
I have bulletin
It's a
boards
board,
because
right,
I was a teacher. I got all this stuff all over the place. So I want them to be able to really see that.
Yeah.
And then the next half of the day is experiential, right? We go out. We got to do something fun together.
Right.
These kids have associated this parent with every negative thing you can imagine.
Right.
We have to start reworking what I call the neural networks in the brain. This is all neuroscience stuff.
Right.
So you go and you start having them have fun experiences. Now that doesn't mean they always want to participate.
Right. They're not always willing,
I
are
know.
they? Yeah.
The dad's
No,
like, I don't know. I don't know if they want to do it. I'm like, I don't care if they want to do
Right,
it.
right.
We're going to go do it.
Well, and so I want to go right back to what you just said. I want to ask another question, right? Are you forcing people against their will? You're holding them hot. Are you restraining them and making them go to, 𝒞𝒶𝓈𝓈 with the other, with the other parent? You know what I mean? Is that going on?
Oh, gosh, no. I mean, the most important thing we start with for the 4 days is creating emotional safety.
Okay.
So the first part of it is talking about we're going to create emotionally safe and physical safe environment here.
Right.
This is going to be a place where we listen to each other. I go through what we call the peace rules. Those are posted. We look at them the whole time we're together. And it really does help, I think, because the children start to feel like, okay, and I say everybody's perspective is going to be respected here. We're going to listen to everybody's perspective. And then I often say, out of that, maybe we'll come up with a new perspective that we've all created together that helps a child when they leave to feel a little differently about their situation. Yeah. So no, I don't want to coerce any of that stuff. I want the child, I mean, look, you want to take a break? We'll take a break.
Right.
You want snacks and water? Go help yourself. Right. Nobody's holding you hostage here.
I got to ask another one, and I can only imagine, because if this happens with us, right? We go to court and you're in the hallway and you've got, our client, their client, and they're sitting on the other side of the hallway from each other or whatever. And then they got their entourage, right, with them, right? And it's like you feel like you're in the middle of a gang war, right? And it's going to break. We're just all in suits, right? So it's weird. But it's awkward, right? It's just awkward, right? And that's okay. That's part of the gig. I can only imagine, though, what you do has to be like hyper awkward, right? It's got to just be over the top awkwardness all the time.
Well, it is in the beginning because clearly the child's scared and frightened and they've been told that this parent is a horrible human being. And like that first half an hour or first part of the day can even be a little bit nerve wracking for me because I don't know what I'm getting into. I mean, I've had kids scream and yell. I've had all kinds of stuff. So I have to kind of get a feel for it. Yeah. But I have to tell you, sometimes by the afternoon, things are shifting.
Really?
I call it, when do you see the flip?
Wow.
Right.
When does the flip happen? And it can be very different. If they're younger kids, it usually happens earlier.
Right.
If I have a sibling there that perhaps is already living with the target parent and they're happy, the kids come in and are like, oh, okay, no biggie.
Right, yeah.
You're okay. We're okay.
Right.
Everybody's okay. Then I have adolescents who don't want to flip very easily.
Right.
And that takes them more time. But usually by the end, they do actually start to feel differently about the parent. They respond to it, like they'll look at them and they'll listen to them. Maybe they'll smile. They don't want you to know they're smiling, but they'll smile, so that you start to see the little changes. And I try to point that out to parents because I'll say, it's shifting.
Right.
I'm seeing it. That's right.
Small
steps.
I don't know if this is a fair metric, but what would you say the success rate is, at least in the interventions that you've done?
I ask myself that a lot and think about it. I would say probably mild, pretty successful, right? I can get that done probably about 75, 80% of the time. Okay. If it's a moderate, it's definitely more difficult, maybe like 60%. But if it's an intensive, 99%.
Success rate?
99% of the time.
Are you serious?
And the only time I didn't have it work was because they did not follow the order I gave them and the judge made a determination to give custody back 50-50 to both parents in the middle of the 90 days. And that fell apart.
All right. So first of all, that had been extremely frustrating after putting in all the work and doing all the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. 99%, which is an astronomical number. How many have you done? Like, let's three. I want to make sure we're not talking about 2, right?
No.
Right. So you've done more than 2. So let's just give me a round number in the last 3 years. How many?
I would say probably like 15 to 18.
15 to 18.
Yeah.
And out of the 15 to 18, 99% success rate of getting the child back with the other parent, with the targeted parent.
That's right. And that's not just from me. I hear that from the therapist. I will work with a therapist as long as they need me to.
Right.
When the child goes back. So I'll check with the therapist. So how's it going? Parents will tell me. I even hear from judges.
Right.
Judges will say, oh, I heard this and that went so well. I mean, so I do hear it from a lot of different people.
Why is that the success rate for the worst cases of alienation, but the numbers are so much lower for mild and moderate?
That's a great question. I would think possibly because when I do a more severe intensive, I say, and I've gotten really good at this, this is the order I need. If I don't get this order, it's not going to succeed. Mm-hmm. You have to follow the structure I'm asking you to do because I have reasons for everything. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do it, it's going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. And really, people pretty much do that. And then we're able to be successful, right? And then I hope that some of the therapeutic things I do to help. So between the structure and the therapy, hopefully that's what gets us there. I think with mild to moderate, it's not always so clean like that. There's a lot more intervention like, well, the judge wants to do this, or the lawyers think we should try that. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know that that's going to work. But you got to do it, right? I mean, you just have to try these
You've got to try all the other things first.
Right. And I really respect that.
Yeah.
So.
Something that we've talked about today, and we've used a couple words, and I want to be real clear because as I told you earlier, we had said the word therapy, and therapy means a lot. And there's a lot of different types of therapy. And so when commenters or people that are watching, they say, well, I did therapy and that didn't work. Well, we're not talking about that type of therapy per se. And we should be more specific. So I want to be specific now.
Okay.
You have used the word reunification therapy, and you've used the word intensive and intervention. Talk to me what all 3 of those are. They're not all the same thing.
No.
Okay. So lay that out for us.
Okay. So with reunification therapy, I'm going to meet with both parents individually. I'm going to meet with each child individually, sometimes multiple times. I'm going to make an assessment. Okay. What are we looking at? Mild, moderate, severe. All right. Here's my plan. Here's how I would like to start with this situation. So, but with intensives, that's different. I do not meet with the actual favored parent.
Right.
Maybe in the beginning, if I'm going to help them write an affirmation letter, which I can explain if we want, but very rarely. So I really work more with the target parent, the target parent's the child, and the family. And then somebody else works with the parent who is the favored parent because I find it's a little bit difficult for that parent to work with me because they see me so aligned with the other parent.
You're the enemy.
Yeah, I can become the enemy very quickly.
Now you've got to work directly with that person. So what you're saying is in an intensive or an intervention, you're saying, hey, you're working with the kiddo, you're working with the targeted parent, the favored parent has got a separate therapist.
That's right.
And you're working with that therapist.
That's right. And I do a lot of work with that therapist. The parent who is the favored parent and is working separately with their own therapist has to do what we call an acknowledgement letter.
Yeah.
And that's a therapeutic process.
Right.
It's not a one and done. Oh, I wrote it. I'm sorry this happened. And I'm like, it doesn't really work that way. I need you to think very carefully about the ways in which you prevented this child from having a relationship with the other parent. So they have to go through the process of really thinking about that. They may rewrite that letter, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times before we get it to the place where I feel like I now want you to read that letter to the children and let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it. And that's when you bring them in.
Yes. Yeah. Then they bring them in and I do meet with everybody at that point.
You got reunification therapy. That typically mild, moderate, that's working there. And then you've got the intensive or the interventions, and that's a little bit more severe, obviously. you said 99% success rate with those. And I want to ask it in a different question.
Okay.
Do you believe that, well, we talked about success being the kiddo goes and starts to have a relationship again with the targeted parent.
Yeah.
Is it also successful with helping the favored parent not engage in that behavior again?
That's trickier.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Because I
yes,
think that's
I see what you're saying.
because getting the kiddo back, that's huge. Don't get me wrong, and that's half the battle. The other half of the battle is stopping it so we don't have to come back and do this again, right?
Well, I'm going to say, sadly, there are oftentimes parents who will not, the favored parent will not engage at all in the letters. They disappear. They just give up. I just won't do anything till 18. I've had that happen in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I have definitely had one case where that did happen. We were able to get that parent to change enough, shift enough in their perspective that the kids were able to continue to have a genuine relationship with the dad, but not disrupt it, right? So occasionally you can get that done. And then I have others that are going to try to go back to doing it again. And you have to kind of help the children be ready for it too. Like, what do you do if that's starting to happen again? How can you handle that, as being a kid?
Give them the resources, right, to manage it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say that it could be a common occurrence that someone goes through the intensive, everyone is fine, for lack of a better word, and eventually they regress back to where they were?
I haven't had that happen too many times, but I think that's partly because most of them disappear. They don't want to do the work. They're just like, nope, not going to do it. Right. And so, okay. Now this is where the court system comes in, because if you've asked a parent to do something, the court has to hold them accountable for doing it or not doing it. And if you have a judge that holds them accountable, then it's gonna work.
Right.
But if you don't, then you're gonna have a problem.
Right. They're going to take, they're humans. They're going to take the path of least resistance. I don't have to do it.
Why would I do it?
Right. So
I've noticed, at least locally, that there are a lot of judges, or a lot more judges than normal, ordering you to do the intensives as part of the court order. So, I would say it's probably unusual for parents to come to the table and agree to do an intensive, right? That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I know.
So this is a situation where it's high conflict litigation, have to have a hearing, and the judge makes the ultimate determination.
Right.
But there have been a lot of local judges ordering the intensives and ordering that you be the one to facilitate that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think partly it's because they started to see it was working.
Right.
Like I had a case with, and honestly, I don't think she knew exactly what to do, but they tried everything. Nothing was working. So they basically she said, okay, we're going to do it. And this child came into the courtroom and just lost it, was screaming at her, all kinds of stuff. And so that child came to me and I worked with that child and the dad for a long time. And eventually that child got back with the father and they're doing great. And the judge is like, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
This works.
She's like, okay, so now she sends me people all the time to work with, not necessarily always intensives, but she has ordered other intensives. And there's another judge in Traffic that's been ordering them. And he also is like, okay, this seems to be working. I'm willing to try this if this is last resort and we can't get anything else done. So I do think it's slowly getting out there. I have judges in other counties, some up in Dallas. They've heard about it. They're like, okay. In fact, sometimes they just get on the phone to me and say, hey, do you think this is a good case for this? Or when would it be a good case for this? And I'm like, okay, not yet, but here's what I can see in the future.
Right. I think one of my last questions here, when is it, in your opinion, when is it best for you to get involved? Obviously, if the judge is calling you, that's one thing, but that means, for the judge to call you respectfully, the two lawyers have gone to court. We've probably had one hearing, if not more, and the judge really doesn't know what to do with that case. That means you've litigated it. It's probably not working, so they're calling you. So that's one way. But if you had your way, right? If you could say, hey, this would set me up for the best chance for success.
Right.
When would you get involved or want to be involved?
Everybody knows from research that early intervention is the best thing you can possibly do. I think the problem is that it doesn't usually come to us till it is in a pretty bad place. And then if it's before that, the parent who is the favored parent doesn't necessarily want it.
Right.
So even if you could get in there and start working with it earlier, there's still a lot of roadblocks to being able to do that.
Yeah.
But early intervention is the best.
Yeah. I got to tell you something. I greatly appreciate you being here today. It's been absolutely fantastic. This is stuff that, you know, we deal with on a daily basis. You deal with on a daily basis. I think it's important, and I really appreciate you going through and kind of explaining things. I'm glad that you clarified that we're not holding people hostage and forcing them to go to Kalahari, which I don't, can you, you may have to force me to go to Kalahari. I'm not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not, that's not my cup of tea in any capacity. They're not going to sponsor us, by the way, at this point. So, but that's okay.
Probably not.
That's okay. But my point is, I really do appreciate you going through and explaining it and using specific terms, right? Reunification therapy, the mild, the moderate, getting to the intensive and the interventions and that sort of stuff. If someone watching this wants to contact you directly to get therapy set up or to talk more about this, how can they do that?
Well, I definitely have a website, and you can go to the website, www.lisarothfus.com. And also that has videos on it. I do YouTube videos.
Fantastic,
So a lot of people will find me by just Googling and seeing the YouTube videos, and they'll call me. And then, you know, can always call my office. I'm on Psychology Today. You can look up my number and get in touch with me that way.
Fantastic.
And I'm always happy to try to just spend a little time seeing if this is a good fit. So
fantastic. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your help today. Jay, you got anything else?
That's it today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Thanks, guys. We'll see y'all next time.